achieved.
Sometimes there are events that, based on the calamity and all the obstacles that we go through leading up to that card, you just wonder if this event is just better off not happening. And that could be the case here. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we're breaking down the upcoming and much maligned UFC Fight Night 70 event, which will take place on June 27th. It will feature 9 fights total, 5 in the main card. I'll be giving the predictions for those 5 fights here. All of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. And this card was initially scheduled to take place in Brazil and feature the finals of the latest Ultimate Fighter Brazil card. Unfortunately, that fell through. It was relocated to Florida, and then the Ultimate Fighter finale, the Brazilian finale not happening here. A number of good fights involving Brazilians fell through because they couldn't get proper working visas to come up and fight in the U.S. So we're reducing. There are still some interesting fights, and we all know that cards that sometimes struggle can actually produce a lot of excitement and a lot of profitable betting night. But to me, I think the UFC could have taken this card, canceled it, and then relocated some of the fights to other cards to kind of bolster those events, and given us a nice big break heading into a massive July that kind of gives us a chance to get fired up again. And then we're craving action. We do have 2 weeks off, but a 3-week break would have really got us fired up for a massive amount of UFC in a short period of time. Now, as far as the bet packs are concerned, I'm coming off an okay UFC Fight Night 69. I went 6-5, but honestly, I felt like I did a lot better. You look through the card, I felt Piotr Hallman was beating Mustafayev up until the cut, so I lost a fight there. I thought I should have won. I thought Nicholas Backstrom beat Lahat, winning rounds 1 and 3. I thought he did more than Noah Lahat than just laying on top of him. So that sucked. Alan Omer was up 2 rounds on Arnold Allen until he got submitted, so that's another fight I lost there. And also, I see why Tetsuya Kawajiri got the win over Dennis Seaver, but honestly, Kawajiri did nothing but lay on top. He was a beneficiary of a referee that didn't do enough stand-ups. I thought Seaver was doing more damage overall when they were exchanging. I could have easily gone 8-3, 9-2 on that card had things gone my way. Unfortunately, 6-5. I did have a pretty solid gold parlay that won. And I have been giving discounts as far as the bet packs are concerned, and people have been taking advantage of them. So this is what I'm going to do for this one. Since July is so massive, there will be a full July, the month of July subscription. If you buy UFC Fight Night 70, you can buy it for $10 individually. If that's what you're into, that's fine. Or if you want to do it this way, you can, for $40, you can get the Fight Night 70 card, the end of June event, plus all 5 July fights. What I'll do is I'll email you the password after I set it for the July pack if you do buy it this way. And what that will do is that will give you a grand total of 6 shows for $40. You're basically saving $20. So it's a pretty solid card. You're getting this one kind of for free and the next one for free if you're looking at it that way. But either way, you're saving $20. So definitely check out your options as far as purchasing the bet packs are concerned. And I've rambled on far enough. Let's get to the first main card prediction. We open the event's action in the UFC's featherweight division in a pretty darn good scrap as the number 14th ranked Hacran Diaz, 22-3-1, takes on Levan, the Hornet Makashvili, currently the record of 10 wins and 1 loss. Now, Diaz originally was slated to fight Chaz Skelly in this matchup, and he pulled out due to illness, I believe, and Makashvili steps up in about 3 weeks' notice, and just a 5-week turnaround from his official UFC debut, where he debuted versus Machida as an injury replacement for another fighter who pulled out. Physically, fairly similar, at least as height and length are concerned. Makashvili is 5 years younger, but Hacran Diaz is a very big featherweight, cuts a lot of weight, and handles it fairly well, but he should be a physically larger man, even though he's not taller or has much of a reach advantage. The experience advantage, though, definitively goes with the Brazilian. 26 fights as a professional to just 8 for Makashvili, plus he has 4 fights in the UFC, and Makashvili just has the 1 fight. Diaz also fighting out of Nova União, a very good camp that produces very top-level fighters like Jose Aldo and Renan Barão. It's a very good wrestling camp overall. We know that, even though the Brazilians don't get a lot of credit for it, both offensively and defensively very strong. And that's going to come in handy here as Makashvili comes from a wrestling background. He's a highly touted wrestler, collegiate background, very good grappler on the ground. He has 3 wins by knockout, 4 wins by decision. His only loss actually coming by decision in his career. For Makashvili, when he's striking, he's a little bit wild with the striking, but again, he's at his best when he can wrestle. And against a diva, he used the clinch to the utmost effectiveness. He had a nice power lift takedown in that matchup. Unfortunately, after he scored, he couldn't hold the position. He also sort of showed some nice trip takedowns from the clinch. and landed strikes from top position. But again, as soon as he opened up with strikes, he couldn't keep his opponent on his back. He kept getting back up. He is strongest when he can clinch up. Where Machida had success shutting down Makashvili is obviously whenever they clinched, he immediately broke the grip, broke the hands, separated, and created some distance and went back to work. And that's where Makashvili started to have some issues. When Makashvili fights from range, he seems to stall out as far as his offensive output is concerned. He likes to try and sit back and counter a little bit, and he was allowing his opponent to get off and land, be the busier fighter, the more aggressive, and that does not look good with the judges when they see that happening. For Hacran Diaz, he's had mixed results against wrestling-based fighters. We saw him beat Darren Elkins, where he stuffed 5 of 6 of Elkins' takedown attempts, and he landed 5 of 6 of his own, which is pretty solid. He lost to both Nick Lentz and Ricardo Lamas, but still his defensive numbers were solid. Lentz threw 17 takedown attempts at him. He stopped all but 4. Lamas threw 11. He stopped all but 2. So pretty good numbers there. Overall, his defense, he's very strong. He has excellent balance. And one thing we're seeing more and more of these guys from Novo and Yan, I picked up on in the last couple of fights, is when they get pushed into the cage, they really like to jam their foot into that gap between the mat and the cage, and what that happens is that gives them an extra point, an extra connection point where they're able to really fend off and use that friction and control to hold, keep their opponents from taking them down, and that's going to come in very handy in this fight when Makashvili tries to take him down from the clinch, because that's what he was doing against the Diva, pushing him into the cage, getting body control, and taking him down. So that actually puts Hacran in a position where he can defend, better from. And Diaz, he's a very capable grappler. BJJ black belt. He does have 3 wins by knockout, but 9 wins by submission overall. And he's 10-3 in fights that go the distance. He uses his strikes very well to set up his takedowns when he does look to shoot in. And he could try and put Makashvili, who's a wrestler, on his back in a position he's not comfortable with. We could watch for that here as well. I thought Diaz showed excellent striking technique against Elkins. The lateral movement diffused the forward pressure of the wrestler very nicely in that matchup. And I think he's going to thrive if Levan tries to counter, and I think we're going to see Diaz picking him apart all fight if Makashvili tries to sit back and counter and let him be the first to engage. Additionally, this is a big step up for Makashvili. Also on short notice, so that's significant, and a quick turnaround from his last fight, which can be questionable. He needs to be consistent with his wrestling, both scoring takedowns and keeping his opponent on his back, and for that, I don't think he will. So my prediction is Hacran Diaz to defeat Levan Makashvili by decision. Fight number 2 in the main card takes place in the middleweight division as the long, quote-unquote, awaited debut of the Canadian Steve the Boss, Bossé, 10-1-0, takes on Thiago Santos of Brazil, the current record of 10 wins and 3 losses. Now, the Bossé story has been quite interesting. He signed with the UFC, was initially scheduled to face fellow Canuck Ryan Jimmo, pulled out of that fight, and subsequently retired before actually ever stepping inside the octagon. Then he got the call to come back and face Fabio Maldonado with the Rampage Jackson fiasco going on. Rampage got the okay to fight. Bossé was pulled immediately. Rampage stuck back in. Now Bossé gets an opportunity to come back and officially make his debut. Finally, he hasn't fought in almost 26 months. It's a significant layoff. He's only had 2 fights since 2010, and on top of all that, he's now cutting down to 185 pounds after formerly contesting his career at 205 pounds. This is the first time he's done that in his career, so it's going to be very interesting to see how that cut goes. For Thiago Santos, he's coming off a body kick stoppage of Andy Entz. It's the second time in his last 3 fights, both happening in the UFC, where he's nailed his opponent with a body kick, the other one being Hani Marks, put them down and eventually finish them with the subsequent follow-up strikes. Physically, these guys are the same height. Slight reach advantage for the Brazilian, and he happens to be 3 years younger than his opponent. Now, Bossé, he's a former hockey enforcer, which is the ultimate Canadian dream, right? Hockey enforcer, chance to go and fight for a living now. But he does have a very solid MMA resume for a regional guy. He has a couple of big names on his list: Houston Alexander, Marvin Eastman, Wes Sims, so guys that we at least know, maybe not elite level guys by any stretch of the imagination, but they're recognizable. For Santos, he's a highly accredited fighter: black belt in Muay Thai, green rope in capoeira, and a BJJ purple belt. So he can do it, do a lot of different things. Both guys are primarily strikers for the most part. Santos, 6 of his 10 wins have come by knockout. For Bossé, 8 of his 10 wins have come by knockout. All 8 of Bossé's knockouts have come inside the first round. For Santos, 5 of 6 have come inside the first round, so there's a very good chance this fight might not last longer than the opening 5 minutes. And you kind of have an interesting matchup here. Bossé, power striker, brawling boxer type, if you will. For Santos, primarily a Muay Thai fighter, if you look at his style. Bossé, more of a power puncher, throws very hard, relies primarily on that boxing, as they said, so maybe not as multifaceted as his opponent will be. One of the issues I see with him is he's very hittable. He leaves himself open at times. It hasn't cost him yet, but again, he's stepping up to a higher level of competition. For Santos, strong striking repertoire, good kicks. We've seen with the body kick, he can go low, he can go high. As I said, he will target the body, which seems to be very effective, and I fully anticipate seeing him go there as well. Bossé does train at a TriStar, so he's training out of a very strong camp. He could look to exploit Santos on the mat if that's an issue, try and take him down, wrestle him from top position. I don't know if that's the wisest thing he could look to do, but I don't think he has the ground game to really do that. That's something I don't expect to see. He might try, but it's not going to be overly successful. Now, as I said before, all of Bosse's KOs have come inside the first round. He's had just 3 fights go outside of the opening frame. He's had a long layoff, minimal activity when he is fighting. You know, he's coming into this matchup cutting weight. This is a massive issue for him. As if this fight doesn't end in the first round, I don't see him faring very well if this fight goes beyond the opening 5. He's very aggressive early on, so if his body can't hold up with the cut to 185, that's a big cut, 20 pounds. That could be a massive concern. And I'm still not sold on guys, especially trying these last-ditch efforts to cut down at a later point in their career to a lower weight class to have success. Santos has looked really on point of late, I felt. Even in his loss to Uriah Hall, I thought he held his own very well. I think Santos keeps in range with his length and kicks early on and lands something significant, and my prediction is Thiago Santos to defeat Steve Bosse by TKO. Fight number 3 on the main card features a matchup of fighters that the UFC often likes to put together, and that's former Ultimate Fighter champions, almost like that quote-unquote World Cup of I don't know, Ultimate Fighter, if you will, as Brazil's Antonio Carlos Jr., a 5-1, takes on Eddie Truck Gordon with a record of 8-3. Now, we take a look at what they've done of late. As I said, it's a battle of Ultimate Fighter winners. Gordon won his season at middleweight, where he's still competing. Antonio Carlos Jr. won his season at the Ultimate Fighter Brazil at heavyweight. He's one of those incredibly, shrinking Brazilians who can seem to cut down 2 or 3 or 2 weight classes sometimes. Sometimes guys go further than that after the Ultimate Fighter is over. As I said, Carlos Jr. won his Ultimate Fighter heavyweight. He dropped to light heavyweight when he fought and lost to Patrick Cummins, and now he's dropping to middleweight. So he's had fighting in 3 different divisions so far in the UFC when this fight officially is in the books. Physically, he is 2 inches taller. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage, and he's 7 years younger than Eddie Gordon as well. Now, what we have here for the most part is the wrestling of Eddie Gordon against the BJJ of Carlos Jr., who's very good on the ground. Now, Gordon is a BJJ blue belt, but I don't think he wants to go one-on-one in a grappling match with Carlos Jr. In this fight. Gordon, experience advantage, even though he doesn't have a lot of fights, 10 total pro bouts to just 5 for his opponent. He's also fighting the 4th time in the UFC, and for Antonio Carlos Jr., this is just his 3rd appearance overall. For the most part, for the Ultimate Fighter winner, Gordon, it's been a bit of a rocky ride. He took out Diego Lima, but that win is starting to lose a little bit of its shine with the losses Lima has incurred lately. Gordon was having a lot of success in winning the Josh Salmon fight until he got knocked out. I thought he did okay against Dempsey in his last matchup. He could have been given the decision, but ultimately he lost that fight as well. And he could very well be facing the end of his UFC career with a 3rd consecutive loss, considering he's been pretty low level and he's needs a big win here. Overall, Gordon really seems to struggle in fights as they progress. He starts off strong, and then he seems to falter a little bit and allows his opponent to get their footing and maybe take control of the matchup. He is a strong starter, not a good finisher. We'll go with that, even though he does have some wins pre-UFC outside of the opening round. For Carlos Jr., this is the his first 3 fights of his career ended inside the first round, all of course by victory, all not surprisingly by submission. His last 2 have gone much deeper, both going the distance, 1 win, 1 loss. Vitor Miranda beating the guy he beat in the Ultimate Fighter finale. I think he's going to want this fight in the ground. That's not that surprising. He does have some power in his hands. He has been improving with his striking, so he's very capable on the feet, at least of holding his own against a guy like Eddie Gordon, who's decent, but not all world as far as striking is concerned. What Antonio Carlos Jr. does, he wings some wild punches, looks to close the distance and clinch, drag the fight to the ground. I expect to see him trying to do something like that. He was getting taken down by Patrick Cummins with fair regularity. He was still quite aggressive off his back. He attacked legs. He was very, pushed the pace there from that back position, even though he was losing it. Gordon has solid striking. He was having success scoring some takedowns against Josh Salmon. He had mixed success against Dempsey in that matchup, but he'll need to be very careful if this fight hits the mat, because Antonio Carlos Jr. is so capable on the ground of changing positions, sweeping, and attacking submissions, both top and bottom position. But obviously, I don't think Antonio Carlos Jr. wants to be on his back against a sizable opponent like Eddie Gordon, who can really generate some power from top position. What I do like here, though, is the aggression of the Brazilian, both on the feet and the mat, to wear Gordon down and to bring out those issues that he has late in the second half of fights. Antonio Carlos Jr. doesn't have world-class cardio either, but I like what I see out of him in his last 2 matchups in the second half. He's still going for it. I think the Brazilian learned a lot from the Patrick Cummins matchup. He'll benefit from that here. I think he'll keep chaining submissions together until something catches. He might even score a knockdown and catch Gordon in a rush, and my prediction is Antonio Carlos Jr. to defeat Eddie Gordon by submission. Co-main event time, and we're in the UFC's welterweight division, is Lorenz the Monsoon Larkin, 15-4-0 with 1 no contest, takes on Santiago Ponzinibbio. Again, I struggle with his name all the time. He's actually hailing from Argentina, though he trains out of Brazil, and he has a very impressive record of 21 wins and 2 losses. Now, Larkin is making his second appearance as a welterweight, which is crazy considering he fought in Strikeforce initially as a light heavyweight. He's fought as a middleweight for quite a while, and now he's moving down to welterweight. He knocked out John Howard. He was quite impressive. Knocked out John Howard in his welterweight debut. He looked great, and he just, keep in mind, he has a recent win over the reigning welterweight champion, Robbie Lawler, so he certainly has his eye on the prize, figuring he could get a fast track into contention with a couple more impressive victories, with starting with Ponzinibbio here and adding to the John Howard victory. And as I said, one thing with Larkin, though, when you go back to the weigh-ins for his last fight, he looked incredibly drained. It looked like it was a very tough cut for him, which the first cut can be, considering you're going from 185 to 170. That's a long way down. But he looked exceptional. He looked like he rehydrated quite well on fight day. He looked quite good there, had a lot of energy, and got the job done. Now, Ponzinibbio, he's won back-to-back fights since a lackluster debut where he lost to Ryan LaFleur, who's a pretty good prospect in his own right. He will have a 1-inch reach advantage and a 1-inch height advantage coming into this. Now, both guys have significant power. The Brazilian, 11 wins by knockout. Larkin, 9 wins by knockout. Also keep in mind, Santiago has 6 wins by submission, so he's the more multifaceted fighter in this pairing. Both guys have lost once by knockout. Larkin got KO'd by Costa Philippou, and Santiago, way back before the UFC, the UFC came calling, got knocked out by a fellow UFC fighter, Leonardo Mafra. Now, when Santiago fought Sean Strickland in his last matchup, he was very effective at keeping the pressure on. Strickland probably the more technically sound fighter, but Santiago kind of nullified that with the pressure. He threw a lot of single leg kicks and punches. He has a nice spearing jab, but he kept in his face and kept him backing up, and that was a very effective way to do things. He still got dropped, and he tends to get dropped and hurt in a lot of fights, but he's never actually been, other than the one knockout of Mafra, never really known for having a bad chin. He's very tough, very durable, and seems to come back. If he does open up and brawl, he gets a little bit wild, and that could create some issues against Lorenz Larkin, who's probably the more technically sound striker, but we'll see how that, if that actually transpires. As I said, he had some success taking Strickland down. He's a BJJ black belt. He could look to work a grappling-oriented attack against Lorenz Larkin together as his main focus or as to supplement his striking attack. For Lorenz Larkin, lots of movement. He showed good footwork in his welterweight debut. He's very fast. He looked very fast for the division, even though John Howard really not known for being a super fast welterweight. Larkin has a very solid jab, in and out, landed some good combinations, hurt, and again eventually flurried to stop John Howard on the feet in the first round. One thing I didn't like, though, he was eating a lot of leg kicks, and Santiago has some nice leg kicks, and that could really do some damage there if he can land them. Another thing I'm concerned with, we didn't get to see Lorenz Larkin fight deep into a welterweight bout. How does he hold up over a longer, grueling fight? He fought just over 2 minutes, and before he started to slow down. For Santiago, he fights a very grueling, style of pace, very in your face, very aggressive, keeps fighters engaged, doesn't let them, stand off and, do what they want. He keeps his opponent backing up. His chin is a bit of a concern, getting cracked a couple of times, but again, he doesn't have a huge history of knockouts, so we'll see if that, changes here. He's quite durable, and I expect him to see him employ that brawl the boxer style. When Howard fought Larkin, it was the ideal style for Larkin. Stand, at range, exchange, not some guy's going to push into the cage and swing wildly and keep you backing up and not know what's coming next. I expect to see Ponzinibbio landing big leg kicks, which will slow Larkin down over a longer fight. As I said, he's a BJJ black belt. Some grappling and takedowns, will add another dimension to his attack that Larkin will have to worry about and won't have an answer to if he looks to try and take him down. Larkin has been known to struggle pulling the trigger in the face of pressure, especially when he fought at middleweight, and that was some of the issues. He didn't, go out there and wasn't aggressive. He let guys dictate the pace, and that cost him. I think we see something like that here, and my prediction is Santiago Ponzinibbio to defeat Lorenz Larkin by decision. In the main event of the evening, and obviously the biggest fight on this card, we're in the UFC's middleweight division. It's the former UFC light heavyweight champion and number 3 ranked, and former middleweight title challenger, and number 3 ranked middleweight on the planet, Lyoto the Dragon Machida, 22-6-0, battles the number 6 ranked Yoel, Soldier of God Romero, with a record of 9 wins and 1 loss. Now Romero, he is looking to earn himself a title shot. He has some guys he has to jump. One of them is Machida. Unfortunately for Romero, a win, no matter how dominant over Lyoto, is not going to earn him a title shot. Rockhold took a lot of the shine off the Dragon. Even though Machida's an elite level fighter, at least has comes into this fight with that reputation. Rockhold beating him in that manner. You've got Rockhold and Jacare both between Romero and an opportunity to fight Chris Weidman for the title. For Machida, he's trying to stay in the top 5 of the division. He still sits there as number 3, but a loss here will take him to the brink of being eliminated from that position. For Romero, he's been out of action for 9 months. He's coming off of Stoolgate, where he fought and had issues with getting off the stool against Tim Kennedy, eventually winning that. He also was scheduled to face Jacare and was forced to pull out of that matchup. For Machida, he's got a quick turnaround. He fought just over 2 months ago, so the thing is, with an older guy, I really like that. 2-3 months tops between fights can really do a lot for them as they feel like they're still in good condition. It's not a big build-up going to the fights. That could be an advantage for Machida. When you look at Romero, he's an excellent progression of opponents since coming to the UFC. Starting with Clifford Starks, then Honey Marks, Brunson, Brad Tavares, and then finally Tim Kennedy, and now Lyoto Machida. They all seem like a perfect progression of stepping stones up to the elite level, and this is a big test for him. For Lyoto Machida, though, you look at the guys he's been fighting of late, elite level guys. The former light heavyweight champion John Jones, the current middleweight champion Chris Weidman, the current middleweight number 1 contender Luke Rockhold, and of course the former Strikeforce light heavyweight champion Gegard Mousasi. Those are some very big, impressive names, none of which Romero has fought anybody on that level. Physically, both guys are actually former light heavyweights. Machida is 1 inch taller, will have a 1 inch reach advantage, and he actually is 1 year younger, which is surprising considering how long he has been around. Now, we have a collision of styles here. Machida's karate, elusive, fencing attack versus Romero's Olympic-level wrestling skills, very physical, throws some unorthodox techniques, but not nearly the striker that Machida is. Romero, though his striking keeps getting better, he's very light on his feet. He throws a lot of singles, though. He will mix some combinations, various kicking techniques. He's very relaxed when he attacks. He moves out of the way of a lot of his opponent's offense. He can anticipate or see coming because he is an elite-level athlete. He changes speeds very well. He looks like sometimes he's moving in slow motion. He'll have a quick burst, try to kind of almost pot shot his opponent, which can really throw his opponent off when they're not able to anticipate his rhythm and the way his cadence, the way he attacks. And he covers distance very well. When he fought Brad Tavares, he uses wrestling extremely effectively. 7 takedowns. He had 3 against Tim Kennedy. Mediocre success in there. But he hasn't had a ton of success elsewhere using his wrestling. And he actually had some issues with being taken down. We saw Honey Marks and Derek Brunson combined for 5 takedowns and had a lot of success, including Brunson, who was on the verge of beating him until he eventually got stopped. Big question for Romero, though, is his cardio. We've seen in the past where he's slowed down in fights as they go on. Against Tim Kennedy, he was slowing down tremendously in the second round. If he can't control the pace and if he is pushed, I don't think he's going to be comfortable in this fight as it progresses. You look at Romero against Kennedy, he wasn't nearly as successful in the second round controlling the pace. He had bad body language. His shoulders were kind of hanging, huge breath. He looked huge big breaths. He looked exceptionally labored. He was stalling on the cage. He was still capable of flurries and attacking, but still it wasn't consistent. He's never gone 5 rounds before, like Lyoto Machida, who's gone 5 rounds 3 times. He's 11-3 overall in fights that go the distance, so he knows how to win long, elongated fights. He also has experience. The Dragon also has experience against wrestlers. He knocked out Ryan Bader. He lost a questionable fight to Phil Davis. And while I feel Romero is faster than both guys and is a more capable fighter and obviously higher accreditations when it comes to wrestling, I still think Machida will have some of the similar successes. The question is Machida still at elite level? Is Romero at elite level? This fight will go a long way to proving one or the other. Possibly both, depending on the outcome. Overall, Romero needs to dominate Machida very early on and get those first 3 rounds in the books. Because I think as he slows down, Lyoto is going to pick him apart. The success that Rockhold and Weidman had against Machida was due to pressure and constant attack. They stayed right in Machida's face, kept him backing up, did not allow him to try and pick his spots and come forward in time and anticipate. And I think that's something where Romero does the opposite. He likes to float out of range, try and pot shot his opponent, look for flurries, and that's going to give Machida a lot of time to measure him and figure out where he's going to attack and when he's going to attack and be the more effective fighter. Machida, I think he's going to defend Romero's attempts on the outside. He'll counter them, and I think Romero could find some success with his wrestling, but as the fight goes, he will tire, it will diminish, and I think Lyoto Machida is going to catch him eventually, whether it be early on in the fight when they're fresh or later on when Romero slows down. But my prediction is Lyoto Machida to defeat Yoel Romero by knockout. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 70. The 4 preliminary predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I apologize for how long it took me to get this out because I did had my schedule's a bit delayed. If you are interested in buying the bet pack for this show, again, only 9 fights. A lot of money still can be made. You can buy it for $10 in the bet shop, or if you're interested in maybe saving some cash, you can basically buy this one and all of July, which is 5 fights in total, so 5 bet packs, $60 normally. You can buy all that for $40 and save yourself $20 in cash. I'm looking forward to a 2-week break before the next show, but then we have like 3 shows in almost a week, I think, is maybe even more. You can always check the calendar function on my website because I have the entire year mapped out. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'll still be busy over that 2-week break. As always, thank you very much, guys, for tuning in, and I will catch you here in the not-too-distant future. Take care, guys.